Thank you for dropping by at Equity Communities of Practice, the convening place for cross-sector collaboration, community advocacy, and personal development, where development and growth are key to achieving sustainable and effective change. Our mission is to leverage insights gained through ongoing community building to promote health equity across all sectors, including finance, education, healthcare, public health, environmental justice, corporate social responsibility, and more. For more information, visit our website at www.equitycommunitiesofpractice.com. Together, we can make a difference. And now your host, Executive Director, Dr. Harry Pettaway, aka Dr. Harry the Equity.
Already a glitch.
Yes.
A glitch. Babe, but that's okay. And Tim, if you hear anything weird with my audio, let me know. Hey, everybody.
Yes.
My name is Dr. Harry Pettaway, aka Dr. Harry the Equity Coach. I bring people together, level them up to solve important problems related to health equity. And that is what we are doing today with my guest, Tim Hauser. Tim.
Hi,
it
Harry.
Is so good to see you again.
Same here.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
I'm giggling a little bit because no matter how many times we walk through this one run through, I still screwed it up. But it's okay. We'll be good. So
yes.
I do have a question for everybody. One of the things that I like to do with these is to ask the question: how are you arriving? How are you feeling? What's going on through your mind? For me, how I'm arriving, I am very anxious and excited because I am happy to have Tim here. Also, a little bit inspired. And after you talk to Tim, and if you get to spend some time with Tim, I'm sure you'll feel that way as well. Tim, how are you arriving?
I'm arriving very excited, actually.
Yeah.
Not only to be on the show, but I got a special event coming up on Sunday.
How special is it?
It's very special.
What is it? Tell me what it is really quick.
All right. It's called Rally Against Suicide. It's going to be in downtown Cleveland, Ohio. And we got several organizations such as the Cleveland Cavaliers, AFSP coming. And we're going to educate the community on suicide awareness and prevention.
And Tim, what organizations do you represent?
I represent Veterans Assurance Network.
Right on. And who is Veterans Assurance Network? I should know, but I'm just...
Yeah. It's a new nonprofit designed to help veterans locate the services and aid that they desperately need.
All right. Hey, so for a lot of people, I'm not I call Tim a hero and he doesn't like it. And so I'm not, he is a hero, but I'm not going to say that. But what I do like about Tim, he's an advocate for people. And how I was exposed to Tim is that through social media, because I went to high school with Tim's wife. I got to see Tim behind the scenes a little bit different than some of the people get to see him. And gradually, over the course of time, I watched Tim was on this interesting journey. Was it 2020 or is it 2021-ish?
It started in 2020.
Okay. Yeah. And
right after Marcy and I got married.
Okay. And what Tim was doing is that Tim was working on something called the PACT Act. And we can provide some more information about what the PACT Act is. But I have a video that I want to show you that it kind of hits home because it shows the type of fighter that Tim is and his fellow veterans that he worked with. Here's a clip with John Stewart. And you'll hear Tim chiming in the background in just a little bit, but let's roll this clip.
So ain't this a bitch?
Yeah. Yep.
Ain't this a bitch?
Yep.
America's heroes who fought in our wars, outside sweating their asses off, with oxygen, battling all kinds of ailments, while these motherfuckers sit in the air conditioning, walled off from any of it. They don't have to hear it. They don't have to see it. They don't have to understand that these are human beings. Do you get it yet? Do we see that these aren't heroes? These are men and women, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers. These people thought they could finally breathe. You think their struggles end because the PACT Act passes? All it means is they don't have to decide between their cancer drugs and their house. Their struggle continues.
This bill does a lot more than just give us health care.
Gives them health care, gives them benefits, lets them live.
Keeps veterans from going homeless, keeps veterans from becoming addicts, keeps veterans from committing suicide.
Senator Toomey's not going to hear that because he won't sit down with this man. Because he is a fucking coward. You hear me? A coward. And like I say, I'm used to it. But this type of cruelty on those that we say we hold up as our most valued Americans, then what are we?
I want to give some context to that because I know there were some signs with a certain political party on that. Tim is a equal opportunity critic of politicians that don't help or support veterans. And in that instance, for those of you that don't know about the PACT Act, for years, veterans have suffered from being exposed to toxins from burn pits. They got all kinds of crazy shit going on, rare cancers. They were just dying, and they couldn't get the help that they need. For the government basically said it's not true. You guys aren't you're not sick, and if you are sick, it's not coming from us. So Tim, along with a lot of other groups, fought tirelessly to get that legislation passed. And when that video was taken, they had an unprecedented vote. And what I mean by that, I think it was like 86-14, something that you just don't see often. But for political reasons, like we see, and this is an opportunity for us to not get political, but for political reasons, the bill got held up. Tim, tell me a little bit about, you had some energy there.
Yes.
You had some anger. Tell me about what that meant.
Well, the night before, it was a late night vote. They voted the PACT Act down in the Senate, and where we were expecting to have a vote in the morning instead of the night before. And we had all the votes for it to pass. Then the senator that John Stewart mentions in the video decided to pull other Republicans into his little group and vote the PACT Act down because he said that the budget for the VA was unconstitutional. So they voted it down. Now, some of them stated that they voted against the PACT Act because the infrastructure bill passed the day before. But it was only Republicans that voted against the bill in both houses. And we almost had to start all over again because this was, they were getting ready to go on hiatus, and most likely it would have their hiatus would have gone into the next voting cycle. So that means we would have had to start all over again, have the bill reintroduced, rewritten. And thank God that Senator Schumer heard us a few days later, because we ended up sleeping. Well, most of the groups ended up sleeping. My wife, she wouldn't let me sleep on the steps of the Capitol building, but they ended up sleeping on the steps of the Capitol building to protest that vote. And we called out just those who voted against the bill. And we called them out extremely harshly. and with due merit too. They brought it upon themselves because they were high-fiving and fist bumping each other when they voted it down. So we had to call them out.
Yeah. And I
Now,
think go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now, if Democrats had done that, trust me, I would have done the same damn thing.
I've seen you get hot on Democrats as well. So that's why I wish I had I don't have a clip on those. The take home for me watching this, I call myself a health equity advocate. I got a doctorate in public health, all these things. I talk to a lot of people. The reality is that there are people that actually get things done and that work hard. Really doesn't matter what degrees and whatnot that you have. You just go and you fight and you get it done and you work for your fellow Americans and your fellow citizens. And that's what Tim did. And I had an opportunity to watch this fight. And what I mean by watch this fight, Tim's on his way back to Washington. Tim, and that was all self-funded, by the way.
Yes.
Like there was no organization behind that. I know you had a lot of family support.
There was an organization I was with, but we had to promise that we'd pay our own travel expenses.
And thanks for calling that out. So what was interesting, the bill got passed. It's awesome. I love the stories about like when you go to the airports and people see you and they thank you.
Yes.
And we had a chance to talk briefly, like just a bit after it passed. And I asked you a question. I said, "So Tim, what's next?" And it was kind of like one of those Disneyland, I'm going to Disneyland, but I knew you liked to fish. I knew you had been working hard. I was really expecting you to say, "I'm going to rest and relax and take some time off." And that is not what you said. You kind of caught me off guard because you did not miss a beat. What did you tell me?
I told you there was still work to be done, and I was gonna go back at it. So there's too much to be done to help veterans out. So I made a promise at one of the speeches I gave in Washington, D.C. that I would continue fighting for my fellow veterans, and I'm trying to uphold that promise as much as I can.
One of the things that you talked about right at the end had to do with what the PACT Act meant. And so for a lot of us in the public health and health equity space, we talk about things like social determinants of health. Basically, it's all the things that influence, how we live our lives. Some of that has to do with access to care and whatnot. And you listed off passionately homelessness, addiction, and the last thing that you mentioned was suicide. And I know that you mentioned about the event that's going to be in Sunday in Cleveland, and I am coming to that event in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
So all my Ohio family, I hope to see you there. Tell me why that's so important to you.
24 years ago, my brother Dennis, who's a Vietnam and Gulf War veteran, decided to take his own life on Christmas Eve. And none of us saw it coming. So after I gathered myself and I decided that more needed to be said about veterans taking their own lives, because I was finding out that a lot of veterans way back in the early 1900s, 1990, matter of fact, 1995 is when I noticed that a lot of veterans were taking their own lives. And it was higher than the national average, even way back then. So I started calling senators, congressmen, sending letters to the White House saying something needed to be done. And at that time, I was getting nowhere. So then I noticed that my health, due to my exposure in the war, in the Gulf War, was starting to take a downside. So I needed to take time to take care of myself as well. So, but then that's when I found out that I wasn't the only one that was sick from that war. So, and back then there really wasn't any social media. Home computers were like brand new to everybody. Everybody's still trying to figure out even how to play euchre on Yahoo Games. So, let alone communicate with each other. Emails were like something from outer space. And so it's hard to get communication going with groups. And, my dad had to take me to all different types of hospitals here in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Indiana, and sitting and listening to these guys and women in these waiting rooms at VA clinics and that. And a lot of them were saying, I ought to just kill myself. It'd be a lot easier. And that kept me focused on that particular issue and still trying to get things done. And finally, with advocating for the PACT Act and getting to meet congressmen and senators firsthand and giving speeches all over the place, it gave me a voice. So now I'm using that voice to try to save my fellow veterans from taking their own lives.
Tim, I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's not always easy to talk about. It's a story that needs to be told, and I appreciate you telling it.
Plus, I still get emotional seeing that video you just showed every time I see it.
Well, hold yourself together on this one. I have another.
I'm good.
I have another video. I mean, if you break down,
hey,
I don't mean it like that. It's all right.
The nation.
I want to play another video because you talked about your conversation with other veterans and families and what your family went through. So let me play this video next, and just to put it in perspective and to give people a chance to click away. It's a story from a family that talks about they are it's hard to even the term suicide survivors. Those are the people left behind. But I want to share this story with you just really quick.
Watching TV, and then something would happen, and I would not tell my wife. They would say something, passed away or died in Afghanistan, and so I'd sit, you wait a couple of days because they would give the names out. You wait for the car to come down the road.
And unbeknownst to most, he was struggling with his PTSD.
I was going out for my bicycle ride. There was a knock at the door. And two chaplains were there. I remember when I first looked out, I couldn't, so like, what are you there? And I just went to the ground. You expected it to happen there. You didn't expect it to happen here.
Yeah.
We thought everything was good here. Back home, everybody's safe.
Tim, that's the piece for me. The last thing he said, and I'm saying this as a civilian. My father was a veteran. My brother is a veteran. I talk about this idea of bias, and what I mean by bias is that we think we know certain things. It's how we view the world to make sense of the world. And so when we think about soldiers and things like that, once they're back home, it's all good, right? They're here, everything is okay. Later on in that video, the mother there, she goes on to say that more soldiers die by suicide than on hostile ground.
That's right.
I literally said, "What the fuck?" And this was this week when I was looking for some content to share with everyone, and I had, as many times as we've talked, and you may have said that to me. I learned something new every day, but I hadn't heard that. Talk to me a little bit about how that video played out for you.
It was just like what my family went through. We knew he had a drinking problem, but he had that even when he was in the service, and he really didn't show any signs. He probably did, but they were so subtle that we didn't notice. And I knew something was wrong when my sister called me up at 8 a.m. in the morning. She never gets out of bed before 8 a.m. So she called me at 8 a.m. and told me what had happened. And he just lived a block away from me.
Mm.
And now, granted, he was in the Air Force and he was a crew chief on an AWACS plane. So he didn't see any action. But the stories and the things that he saw and the missions that he went on to help our fighter jets took a toll on him. Because he knew every time he went up in the air, people were going to die.
It's I think we take that for granted. We meaning that civilians, it's easy for us to complain about our jobs, right? The stress that we have, the frustrations that we have. But literally, the work that you all do for all of us is so, it's just so different. Every piece of it, right? And I think one of the things that you said, it's not that you have to see the worst of the worst. You're just, it's your part of it. And I think later on, we're also going to talk about you don't even need to see action. You don't need to be, in a time of war to struggle with coming out of the military. And I think that's also something
Right.
that we need to call out. Tim, I want to get to giving you a chance to talk about, in general, it's hard to say, veteran suicide and kind of what's going on today.
Well, the numbers are actually rising. The VA is going to tell you that 22 veterans take their own lives every day. Outside sources say it's as high as 44 veterans a day. Within the veteran community, the group that's committing more suicides faster than any other in that veteran community is women. Especially when they're in their perinatal stage of motherhood. I know back in 2021, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 6,042 suicide deaths amongst veteran men and 350 amongst women doesn't sound like a lot. But that's over 50% of the total suicides in the entire country. And veterans only make up 1% of the population. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing what we do. We're the VA targets their messages towards the veteran themselves, saying, if you think you're suicidal, come on in, we'll talk to you. That's not working. Our goal is to educate their family, their friends, the community that they live in. They're the ones who are going to get the veteran to go get help. And another thing that we're working on too is we're trying to educate our here we go with the politics again, but we're trying to educate the politicians on how severe the sexual assault or sexual harassment in the military is, especially on women. Because 90% of those women suicides are because they were sexually assaulted in the military. But the rest of the group, especially with the men, when a veteran separates, they lose all that camaraderie, that teamwork, that sense of belonging. That gets thrown out the window when you become a civilian. Because you go work in a factory or at a store, they tell you, yeah, rah, rah, teamwork, great sales this week. There's no teamwork involved in that. Teamwork is having your buddies back, not handing them a piece of paper and saying, hey, go do this. That's not teamwork. That's not a sense of belonging.
You talked about 6,000 is a lot of death.
Yes.
And I respect what you're saying in terms of, where does it fit in some of the other numbers that we track, but you called out a very important aspect of it, that veterans are only 1% of the population but account for 50% of deaths. So for my public health friends that are out there, because I know that at least some of you all will be watching out on replay. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. We talk about disproportionate consequences for certain things. We talk about that with the pandemic and things like that, how it hit minority communities and whatnot. But I live in Michigan, and we actually had here a summit about suicide prevention, the idea of trying to get to zero suicides. And I spent most of my time with the veterans, and hearing similar stories that you're talking about, especially in terms of the rise of suicides among women, the sexual abuse and harassment among women in the military. And not being a woman, I don't want to speak on all behalf of women, but what I will say as a man, and as a civilian man, these things are important, and we need to use our platforms, voices, and show support for all veterans, especially women in the veterans. I am going to ask for a shameless, whoever's watching in the comments, if you wouldn't mind showing a sign of support, whether you're watching it either live or recorded. Please show us some love there. The other thing, Tim, that you said that I think is equally as important, like, we don't want to talk about politics. Seems like a bad word, right? Like, it's so funny. And like, I used to work at a club, and we used to say things like, things you don't talk about are religion and politics ever. And that seems to have at times carried over into I want to say real life, but I believe that our lack of talking about politics has led to some of like the polar conversations that we have, that then make it difficult when you start looking back at things like the PACT Act. Like, how do we actually get people to work together? Like, at the end of the day, politics and policies are public health, right? Those are the things that we need to get resources, to bring attention. I mean, one of the simplest things that we haven't talked about yet is trying to make September 22nd. I always screw up the exact terminology. How about you say what it is?
All right. In the state of Ohio, September 22nd is Veteran Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day.
There we go. I always flip them. And you might, people out there, you might see some things out on the internet right now that say that there is a national day. That is a very informal national day. All that showing is that we are getting some momentum. There are people paying attention. And so it's kind of like people like me saying like, hey, it's National Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day for veterans. But what we need to be careful about is that there's actually something that we can do about that to make that happen. From a public health perspective, awareness is key, right? Like knowing that this is a thing, knowing that it's important to our politicians, and then having the highest level of government say it so, can go a long way. So what you should see right over Tim's head in the corner is a QR code. If you want to come back to the recording to take a picture of it, that will be great. But where that will take you is to the White House, and you can email your favorite representative. And I'm going to say this, it doesn't matter if you see this after the 22nd, whomever is in charge, whomever gets elected, they still need to get out their ass and make September 22nd National Suicide and Awareness. And what I did wanted to point out, I promised him I'd say this too. some of the things that you see in terms of people like posting that it already is, it's not going to make it through Congress. Like this isn't like a Congress bill kind of thing. Like the path towards this is actually an executive order. But
Right.
to get an executive order, you need to make your voice heard. And you need to contact folks. So if you wouldn't mind going out to that QR code and please emailing the president, vice president, whomever is at the White House, whoever's your favorite, please do so. And then also, we want to make sure that everyone is aware of if you are a veteran in crisis or family in crisis, please dial 988. I'm also going to say for veterans, they should press 1, but this
Yes.
line is available for any, like if you dial
Everybody.
988, anyone can get help. And so we want to make sure that you have that resource as well. So
And one thing I
go
want
ahead.
to mention about 988, it used to be a 1-800 number. Who had time to dial 1-800, you know? And the thing too is you usually got a voice recording to leave your name and number and they would call you back. Or you'd get somebody hired just to answer the phone and they had absolutely no way of taking care of you. They had no knowledge on how to do that. Now with 988, it's so updated that now you will get to talk to a live certified therapist.
Again, it's never rest, right? Like we can
Right.
always do better. Hopefully we
Mhm.
can see 988 improve, but I mean that is a step forward from an 800 number and a recording or someone that just doesn't know
Right.
how to help you. Let's move on to the next topic, and this is another one. Signs of trouble. Again, what gets in the way for people like me is that we think veterans are so tough and strong that nothing can hurt them, right? And so I want to share another video that speaks to this. It's the same family, but I think that their story resonates with a lot of others. So let's move on to that.
I'm very proud of my son. He gallantly fought those demons, but they won the night of September 7.
When that demon hits, it hits. It was not our son.
It was not our son's intention.
No, it was.
He was fighting it so hard.
Yep, it was just overtook him.
We never thought our son would have PTSD. Never.
No.
He was so strong.
Our son was 6'3", big, strong. Our son could go over and fight the battle and fight to win, and never thought that PTSD was in his mind at all. The day that he died by suicide, we were exchanging texts, and I was telling him I finally broke 100 on golf, and we were joking back and forth. And then after that, he went to Walmart. He contacted his roommate, going to Walmart, and I'm getting food for the week. So he did the week shopping, gets back, and then hours later, I mean, it was just, to be here a week before he passed away, he hit it so well.
Yeah.
That hits it right on the head, man.
Yeah. I'm going to take my camera off just so we can show the full screen. I can help comment, but I want to give people an opportunity to look at this. Also, if it helps to take a screenshot of any of this, or if you want the slides, Tim, is it okay to share some of this presentation? Reach out to us. Our goal is to provide information, not for us to talk and pass time. If we can save one veteran's life, we made or anyone's life, we made a difference. Tim, would you mind talking about some of the signs?
Yes. First, to let people know that sometimes these signs are so subtle, they're very hard to notice. But one that I do want to point out right away is the mood swings. If you're individual that is normally a very happy person, but all of a sudden, out of no explanation, are easily angered by the tiniest little things that they used to laugh at, this could be a very good warning sign. Or vice versa, if they're usually grumpy, then all of a sudden they're happy-go-lucky. That could be a warning sign. Other things too is like if they're giving away their personal belongings, talking about death a lot all of a sudden. If they go home, if they never own a firearm, all of a sudden go out and buy a firearm, that's something to take notice of. Especially if all they do is just buy one case of ammo. Something to take notice. If they all of a sudden start drinking or doing drugs, chances are they're trying to suppress their feelings. Sooner or later, those feelings are going to beat over those drugs and alcohol. So if all of a sudden they start, using those, that's definitely when you need to step in and say, hey, let's have a talk.
You brought up a lot of again, another plug. Please show some love in the comments. A support emoji would be wonderful. You bring up a lot of things that I think it's also true in everyday life, but it's this idea. But for me, it's this idea that people struggle inside. There's a stigma attached to mental health and mental
Yes.
wellness. I think it's worse for veterans. I can't speak for you, but one of
It
the
is.
things that's been interesting is that everything that you've told me, no matter what veteran that I meet, it's a similar story, no matter where they came from. Like in theater, is that the word that you use or
Yes.
not? Some of these things are so similar, and I don't think I'm trying really hard. You can probably tell I keep pausing and I keep stumbling because I'm trying not to really hard. I'm trying really hard not to say like what I think. But we do need to break the stigma related to.
That's what needs to be done. Say what you think, and then we build on from there.
Yeah. For men in general, I think also, and I don't want to make this about men. It's just hard it's hard to break that stigma, right? It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Go get help. Go talk to someone. I've done it. It's helped. More than I mean, it's not a submission to life. It's probably one of the bravest things that you can do. And once you get there is help. I also know there's a push for trying to get more veterans, more military mental health workers from the military, which is awesome. I had a chance to meet some of them earlier this month. I didn't mean to cut you off, Tim. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. One thing that people need to realize too is in the military, if you're sent to mental health, you've already got one foot out the door. They're getting ready to discharge you. And that thought carries over with us when we become civilians again. Because if you go to your sergeant or your commander or whatever and say, hey, I'm having some issues, I think I need to go see counseling. Yeah, they're already, if they say okay, then they're already thinking, yeah, we need to go ahead and discharge this guy if he can't handle it.
Yeah. One of the things I'll do also, I'm going to put it in the comments after this is done. The video clip that I'm showing you is Stop Soldier Suicide. It's actually a unique program that's focusing on providing benefits if you are in duty, if you are on base somewhere, you can also get some resources that way. The thing about this veteran crisis line, again, this is confidential, right? Nobody's going to call your boss. Nobody's going to,
Exactly.
none of that's going to happen. It is a place for you to go to seek help. So I encourage everybody to use that 988 number. Let's move to the next one. This is a common theme.
Yes.
Transition to civilian life. I'm going to play the video and then we can talk about it after that.
Okay.
Austin and his company were placed with special forces in Afghanistan for 9 months. And it was not the plan, so they had a lot of pressure on them. And the first time he was able to come visit us here in Southport, we were outside and one of the neighbors came over just so excited to see Austin back from Afghanistan. She said, "Austin, I am sure you're so glad to be back from Afghanistan." And Austin said, "No, not really." Well, that was the first comment that Austin made that I did not understand. She didn't understand either, and she asked, "Well, Austin, why do you say that?" And he said, "Because I had purpose. I had real purpose over there."
Oh, I went too far. I didn't know that was, I had no idea that was a thing. And it's one of those things, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Talk to me more about that transition.
Well, when you're in the military, almost every day you're reminded that you're protecting democracy, you're protecting the Constitution. Your life depends on it. When you get out, it's like, yeah, go throw that tire on that car as it's going down the, factory line, the assembly line. And so you lose that sense of purpose when you get out, because you're no longer fighting for the Constitution or democracy. You're not actually in the fight. So, I mean, there's people out there who think they are, but they've never been in the military, so they have no idea, So
I love how you snuck it in.
yes.
I'm realizing, like, I think people normally that when they tune in to watch me, I'm joking a lot, and I'm not joking on this one. Some of the, once you told me about it, and once I started asking, I'm saying, like, almost everyone that I talked to about it, like even at the conference, it was the same thing, including folks like in the that are active duty, but like National Guard, like that was an interesting one for me, where they go away for a while, they come back, they go away for a while, and they come back, and that they have this difficulty making that transition back to their civilian space.
Even if they stay active duty, when they come back, a lot of them, like in the Army and the Marines, a lot of them still lose that sense of purpose, because they were actually finally doing what they were trained to do, and then they come back and it's not the same.
There was another piece of it that really started to intrigue me, and it has to do with, so in my space, the health equity space, and even some of the DEI space, but this idea of inclusion and belonging, right? Like we all want to belong to something. You can actually see that part of the challenge with politics right now is that sense of belonging, like I'm a part of a team, I'm a part of a group, is really kind of taking over. And so what I learned in doing some research for this is it's not even just the we're fighting for democracy. It's like the commitment to, like, me and you, you are you count on me to keep you alive. I count on you, to protect me. Right. And I played a lot of sports, and I will tell you, it's not the same. We might say things like, my brother's on the field. Like, we use a lot of war terminologies, like the gridiron in combat. Like it's not like that. But if you can imagine your college, high school, whatever your football team, what you thought that belonging was, multiply that by 1 billion, and I think that's what a lot of soldiers and people coming out of service, you lose that.
Yes.
And the grief that goes with that, it seems so flippant. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I don't think a lot of people appreciate what it's like to live inside your head, but to lose that sense of value, it's like I said, once you see it, it's kind of crushing. And so, we need more opportunities to tell these stories and share that. And I don't want to be the one to talk all day, so I'm gonna shut up.
See, one of the things is that people think that we are trained to be able to handle taking someone else's life. There is no such training. And when you're in theater, in a war zone, everybody's life's on the line. So that sense of purpose, that teamwork, that camaraderie is even stronger, because you got to rely on that guy behind you to take care of your back, and you got his, and you got to make sure that camaraderie isn't broken. And once there's a little sense of what you call it, not hostility, but some tension, the group is evaluated and say, hey, look, we need to take care of this before you guys can go back out there. You got to make sure everything is in line. So if there is a little tension between some people in the platoon or in the flight or whatever, it's taken care of right away. And then all of a sudden you would notice they become best buddies. And when you get out, you don't have that.
Yeah. I had even watched I watched some stories about the Vietnam War, and that was one of the the first truly integrated conflicts, right? So where you had blacks and whites together, and there was a lot of racism in that war, but it was interesting to hear how they would describe how they had to shut it off. They shut it off.
Yep.
Because their life mattered, my life matters, and it's something. It's fascinating to hear doing that out of necessity. But let's get to some of the resources, because I think there's value in us talking about the stories. But we had up a slide about the Compact Act, and can you share a little bit about what that is?
All right. The Compact Act is a new law that went into effect on January 17th, my birthday, in the year 2023. And what it is if there is any veterans that have any suicidal thoughts at all, regardless if you're in the VA system or not, you can go to any ER in the country, and the VA will pay for your health care. They will give you they will pay for up to 30 days inpatient care, 90 days outpatient care. And trust me, you could go see that psychiatrist or therapist or whatever every single day for 90 days, and you don't have to worry about it at all. It'll be paid for.
That I almost said that's wild. Coming from insurance, that's wild, and that's an awesome opportunity. I had a chance to talk to some folks that were working on rural health, and one of the challenges is that veterans, especially in rural health, don't know what services they have available.
That's right.
For them. And also just access and insurance and all that. So I think this is a great opportunity for veterans to get help. And I would also encourage folks, again, we have the plug, it's over there by Tim's head. Email the president, ask them to make September 22nd National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day for Veterans. I know I screwed up the name, but you get the idea. Idea. Follow Tim's podcast, and I'll put a link to his LinkedIn profile. Tim's got tons of interviews with other veterans, and what's interesting, a lot of people say must watch, must see, must hear. Everything that's in there is eye-opening. it sometimes is very frustrating, especially when you hear some of the veterans talking about how their teams, like half of them are gone, and not half of them are gone because they were wounded or killed in war. They're gone because of various diseases, suicide, and things like that. So it's something. It's if you want to know what's going on, follow Tim. It's good to know. Again, we have the 988 number up there. If you are in crisis, write this down. Like, even if you want to make up your own meme post, whatever, take a screenshot of this, send it out. Just get the word out on this. The next topic, if my button works, is veterans, families, and in crisis, but non-VA related. Because I'm saying this with a smile, right? Because I know there's some conflict at times with the VA.
Yes.
With that said, I have friends that work for the VA. I know the work that they do, and then going back to what was going on in Michigan and the summit that I went to, I can see the collaboration and efforts trying to tie the community together and share resources. And there were a lot of great VA representatives there as well. But let's talk a little bit about some of the other resources that are available. And for those of you seeing me look at up and around, I have 5 screens that I'm looking at. I apologize for that. So,
Yeah. This is a good subject because a lot of veterans are afraid to go to the VA. They've heard horror stories. Now, the VA's made some big, huge leaps and bounds in improvement, but it's not perfect. But it's getting to the point where even if you go to, let's say, the Cleveland Clinic, it's going to take months before you can get in to see a doctor there as well. So that's why organizations such as American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is a good resource for everybody. They have trained therapists that work pro bono. So if you are in crisis and you are having these thoughts and you do not want to go have anything to do with the VA, these are the people to go to. Not only do they have resources for people who are suicidal, but for their family members to help cope with what's going on. A lot of talk is about saving the person who's suicidal, but there's not enough talk about what the family goes through.
We've talked about that before, and it came up at the conference that I was at. I'm not sure. There's a lot of times that veterans, because they're strong, right? Like they are resistant to help. I don't need the help, whether it's financial assistance, certain types of healthcare, or mental health services. And the gentleman that spoke to us told the story that he was ignoring these services until his wife said something to him about, well, what about your family? What about us? And it's one of those, I want people to love themselves. But if what gets you through the door is to say, what about my wife? What about, my daughter, my granddaughter, whatever it is, consider them. It is not, I'm speaking to a man who knows this way better than I can articulate it. It's not easy to be the one left here.
Right.
And deal with that. So I just encourage everyone to consider the, yes, but your family is important. And we care about families too.
Now, I know you and I have never talked about this, but this is something that goes right along with what we're talking about. There is a movie that was made several years ago. It's called Thank You for Your Service. It's a fictitious story, but it has a lot of truth in the storyline. And it follows 3 soldiers when they come back from war, from Afghanistan, and what they go through, trying to become civilians again. And it also shows what the families go through. So it's a good movie, and I recommend everybody to watch it.
We should check it out.
Yeah, it's good. Give you a good understanding of what veterans go through when they try to become civilians again.
And I don't mean to put us on the spot together. Tim and I, one of the reasons why it's fun working with Tim is that Tim is hey, let's do it. I think about like, well, how can we do it, right? And Tim's always like, well, we just, we'll call this person. Tim is a doer. But one of the projects Tim and I are working on is to try to share what Tim knows in terms of advocacy, resources. I mean, that's really what VAN is all about. Veterans Assurance Network is to try to share resources with people that don't know about it, right? Again, part of the want to give another plug for the rally that's coming up.
Yes. Sunday, September 22nd, downtown Cleveland at Willard Park, which for you Northeast Ohio folks, it's the free stamp park. The corner of East 9th and Lakeside. A block away from the Rock Hall, block away from, I guess it's called Huntington Bank Field now. It's where the Browns play. Unilot's right there. We're going to be giving away free hot dogs, chip sodas, and everything. There will be several organizations there with resources on how to help somebody that's suicidal, on how to ask the tough questions, such as, are you okay? That's the easiest one. Next one is, are you thinking about killing yourself? How many people have the nerve, have the guts to ask somebody, especially a loved one, if they're thinking about killing themselves? That's the question that everybody needs to ask if you think the warning signs are there. But September 22nd, which is going to be the very first event held for Veteran Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day in Ohio.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it just happened to fall on a weekend. So,
and I want to be careful with how I share this story, because I don't want to when I say I don't want to out anybody, I'm not going to give I'm not going to give any details about how it happened. What I do know is that there were 2 people last year in your first event that were able to get help.
Yes.
That were considering taking their own lives. At the end of the day, right? Like we look at, there's not a ton of people on the live stream right now. That's okay. It doesn't matter. If you didn't like because you're afraid to, that's okay. What we want you to do is that we want you to get help. We want you to share the information that we give you. We don't own it. We don't have to have it,
Right.
But that question, man, are you okay? And it doesn't just need to be a veteran. Ask your people.
Everybody.
Love your people.
Yes.
Care for your people. And we're coming up on time here. I could talk to you all day. For those of you that want to know about me, please follow me on LinkedIn. Help me reach my goal of 100,000 followers. I always feel weird saying that, like I'm an aspiring YouTuber, but on LinkedIn. But 2026, I'm trying to keep it realistic. And if you want to hear more content about health equity, learn more about people like Tim, and then also following what me and Tim are doing, contact me. You can reach out to Tim. I love this picture of you and John Stewart. And this is not a John Stewart plug, man, but that guy, you and the 9/11 victim, you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
people shouldn't have to fight that hard.
9/11 folks had to go back to Congress not too long ago.
Yes,
they
did.
Get their bill refunded.
Yes.
They have to do it every couple of years, and I think that's bullshit.
It is. It is. That's what I'm saying. Tim and I, again, we're working on a project to try to teach others how to advocate, especially for things like health equity, how to work with your senators, Congress folks, how to email the president, all that stuff. Please keep a lookout for it. Tim, it has been a pleasure.
Yes.
As it always is. Anything else you want to say before we go?
Yes, real quick. Veterans out there, if you're watching or listening to this, it's time to get involved. It's time to get off your ass and get involved. You can go to congress.gov, type in the search bar, type in veterans. Every single legislation in the Senate and in the House will pop up for veterans. Call your congressman, call your senators, say, hey, we need these passed. We need to do a better job of taking care of each other. We need to look out for each other even better than what we've done. When we got out of the service, we became a member of the largest fraternity in this country, and it's called Veterans of the United States of America. And damn, if we're not doing a terrible job of looking after each other. Our brothers and sisters are killing themselves at a faster rate than in history. Call your battles. Ask them, are you okay? Are you thinking about killing yourself? If they are, contact me, contact AFSP, contact the VA, whoever you need to contact. Dial 988, press 1. Get your battle the help that they need.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, take home
Thank
message.
you, Harry.
Stand for your people. We will have another episode at some point, but until then, we will talk to you later. Thank you.
All right.